how the narcissist makes you feel like the problem every time. There's a kind of tired you don't notice at first, the kind that comes from always being the one who says, "I'm sorry." In the beginning, it almost feels noble. You tell yourself you're being mature, self-aware, emotionally responsible. You're the one willing to reflect, to own your part, to keep the peace. But slowly, something starts to feel off. Every disagreement somehow circles back to your flaws. If you're hurt, you're too sensitive. If you set a boundary, you're too harsh. And without realizing it, a quiet belief starts settling in, maybe this really is my fault. That shift doesn't happen randomly. It's not bad luck. It's a pattern. And it's one of the most effective ways a narcissist keeps control, by making you question yourself instead of questioning them. It rarely starts with blame. In fact, it usually starts with the opposite. At the beginning, you feel seen, really seen. They seem to get you, your values, your insecurities, your dreams. They listen closely. They agree with your worldview. It feels like deep connection. But psychologically, something else is happening too. This stage often involves mirroring. We're wired to feel safe around people who seem similar to us. When someone reflects us back so precisely, trust builds fast. For the narcissist, this creates validation. They feel important, central, admired. For you, it builds emotional safety. And that's what makes the next phase so confusing. When someone who once felt safe starts questioning you, your mind doesn't immediately defend itself. It looks inward. It asks, where did I go wrong? The turning point is usually subtle. You bring up something small, maybe their tone felt sharp, or something they said hurt. You're not attacking, you're trying to talk. But the reaction you get feels bigger than the situation. I can't believe you'd think that about me. Or, you're always looking for problems. Suddenly, the focus shifts. The original issue disappears. Now it's about your negativity, your attitude, your sensitivity. Psychologically, this is about shame. For someone with strong narcissistic traits, shame doesn't feel uncomfortable. It feels unbearable. Their sense of self is fragile, even if it looks confident. So when you bring up a concern, even gently, their nervous system reacts as if they're under attack. Instead of thinking, maybe I hurt them, their mind flips it to, they're attacking me. And just like that, the story changes. You're no longer the person who was hurt. You're the aggressor. When this happens over and over, it creates a strange kind of confusion. You start conversations hoping to solve something and end up apologizing for your tone, your timing, or the fact that you brought it up at all. This is blame shifting, and it messes with your sense of reality. If every attempt to express yourself turns into self-criticism, your brain learns something painful. Speaking up leads to trouble. For the narcissist, this works perfectly. They avoid accountability and regain control. For you, it creates an exhausting split inside. You feel hurt, but you also feel guilty for being hurt. That inner tug-of-war drains you more than you realize. Then there's gaslighting. It's usually not dramatic. It sounds simple. That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're overreacting. Each comment seems small on its own, but over time, they stack up. Chronic stress already affects memory and clarity. When someone consistently questions your version of events, especially someone you care about, doubt creeps in easily. For the narcissist, this protects them from facing mistakes that would trigger shame. For you, it chips away at your confidence in your own mind. You may start checking with friends to confirm conversations. You might replay events in your head late at night, wondering if you imagined something. Healing here means grounding yourself in reality, writing things down, talking to people you trust, and sometimes working with a trauma-informed therapist to rebuild that inner certainty. Another powerful move is what I think of as weaponized vulnerability. When conflict comes up, They don't argue, they collapse. They become the wounded one. After everything I've been through, you're piling on. Suddenly, your attempt to address an issue feels cruel. Psychologically, this flips empathy back onto them. They stay in the role of the suffering party, and you absorb the guilt. Over time, you might stop bringing things up altogether because it feels selfish compared to their struggles. But that's not compassion, it's conditioning. Your nervous system learns that your needs equal harm. And then there's the push-pull of affection. One day they're warm, loving, close. The next day they're distant or cold, and you have no idea why. As humans, we're wired to look for cause and effect. So when connection disappears, your brain automatically asks, what did I do? This unpredictable cycle, psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, actually strengthens attachment. The brief returns of warmth feel like relief, almost like a reward. Your nervous system becomes hyper-alert, constantly scanning for signs that things are okay again. For the narcissist, this keeps you focused on them. For you, it creates anxiety and self-monitoring. You start adjusting yourself to maintain closeness. The hardest part is that none of this feels obvious in the moment. It unfolds slowly. You don't wake up one day thinking, I'm being manipulated. You wake up thinking, I need to try harder. But when you step back, you start to see the pattern. You weren't always the problem. You were placed in a dynamic where taking the blame kept the peace. And the moment you begin to question that narrative, the moment you pause before apologizing automatically, that's when something shifts. Not in them necessarily, but in you. And that's where the real change begins. Projection is a huge part of this whole thing, even if you don't realize that's what's happening at first. It's strange. One day you're being accused of being selfish or dishonest or jealous, and you're just standing there thinking, wait, what? Those words don't even feel like they belong to you. But somehow you're the one defending yourself. Psychologically, projection is like an escape hatch for the narcissist. The traits they can't stand in themselves, the insecurity, the envy, the manipulative impulses get pushed outward. It's easier to point at you and say, that's yours, than to sit with the discomfort of recognizing it in themselves. And the longer this goes on, the more it messes with your identity. If someone calls you insensitive enough times, you start scanning yourself for evidence. You start wondering if maybe you are the cold one, the difficult one, the ungrateful one. That's how identity distortion happens. Not all at once, but drip by drip. Undoing that takes intention. You have to hear your own voice again. Journaling helps. Therapy helps. Even just reconnecting with people who knew you before this relationship can remind you who you were before you started doubting everything about yourself. Then there's the criticism that doesn't look like criticism at first. It's dressed up as concern. I'm just trying to help you grow. I just want you to be your best. On the surface, that sounds supportive, but over time, it feels like you're constantly under review. There's always something to fix, something to improve, something about you that's slightly off. Psychologically, this keeps the narcissist in a position of superiority. If you're the one who's perpetually flawed, they get to be the evaluator, the enlightened one, the stable one. For them, that protects against their own buried feelings of inadequacy. For you, it slowly chips away at confidence. You try harder. You adjust more. You bend yourself into shapes you barely recognize, hoping that maybe this time you'll finally meet the standard. But the standard keeps moving, because the goal was never your growth. It was maintaining hierarchy. One way to protect yourself is to zoom out and look at patterns instead of isolated comments. Real feedback comes with empathy and mutual accountability. If it only flows one way, it's not growth. It's control. After a while, months, maybe years, you notice the toll. You hesitate before speaking. You rehearse simple conversations in your head. You replay arguments in the shower, In the car, lying awake at night, dissecting your tone and word choice like you're studying game footage. This isn't just overthinking. Chronic invalidation actually changes how your brain functions. When you're under constant relational stress, your nervous system stays on high alert. The amygdala, the part of the brain scanning for threat, gets louder. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning and decision-making, gets drowned out. So you second-guess yourself more. You feel less certain. For the narcissist, this confusion works in their favor. A dysregulated partner is easier to control. But for you, healing starts with calming the nervous system. Slow breathing, movement, predictable routines. Somatic therapy if you have access to it. Anything that tells your body, you're safe now. When your body feels safer, your clarity starts to come back. One of the hardest truths to face is why this dynamic lasts as long as it does. It's not because you're weak. It's because weirdly blaming yourself feels safer than facing the alternative. If you're the problem, then maybe you can fix it. That gives you hope. Psychologists sometimes call this an illusion of control, believing if I just communicate better, or if I'm more patient, feels less terrifying than admitting the person you love consistently twists reality. Accepting that the relationship itself is structurally imbalanced is painful. It means you can't single-handedly repair it, and that loss of control is scary. But it's also the doorway to real healing, because once you see the pattern clearly, you stop trying to solve something that was never yours to solve alone. Healing doesn't begin with proving them wrong. It begins with trusting yourself again. It's quieter than people think. It might look like pausing before you apologize and asking, did I actually do something wrong? It might look like saying, I remember it differently, and not backing down. It might mean creating emotional or physical distance, so your perception isn't constantly being challenged. Therapy, especially work that addresses trauma bonding, can help untangle why the attachment feels so strong even when the treatment hurts. And rebuilding your identity often happens in small, almost boring ways. Choosing what you want for dinner without deferring, expressing a preference without over-explaining, letting someone be mildly disappointed without scrambling to fix it. When you stop automatically accepting blame, the dynamic often shifts, and not always peacefully. The narcissist may escalate, the guilt trips might intensify, the rewriting of history might get more dramatic. That escalation can feel destabilizing, but it's also revealing. It shows you how much the old narrative depended on your confusion. Your clarity threatens the structure that kept them comfortable. At its core, this whole pattern isn't about you being defective. It's about defense mechanisms colliding with intimacy. It's about someone who cannot tolerate shame, offloading it onto the nearest safe container. Projection, gaslighting, intermittent reinforcement. These aren't random behaviors. They're psychological strategies designed, often unconsciously, to protect a fragile self-concept. Unfortunately, that protection comes at your expense. But awareness changes everything. The first time you don't rush to smooth things over. The first time you think, is this really mine to carry? The first time you trust your memory instead of accepting their revision. Those moments seem small, but they stack up. Each one strengthens your internal authority. Each one rebuilds trust with yourself. You were not born believing you were always the problem. You were conditioned into it. And conditioning, no matter how deep, can be undone. With boundaries, with support, with steady reconnection to your own thoughts and feelings. The narcissist may never admit what they did. They may never validate your experience. But your freedom doesn't hinge on their confession. It hinges on your recognition. And once you truly see the pattern, it becomes much harder to step back into it.